back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time I'm going to do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Freehold, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, normally powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good evening, everyone. I am, of course, your host, Mike M3 Rosansky, coming to here on this Monday, the 16th day of February. Hope you're all off to a great start in your week on this President's Day, coming off of what was hopefully, whether you're in a relationship or not, a very nice Valentine's Day weekend for you and all of your loved ones. I debated whether or not I was going to do a podcast today based on the fact that we're in one of those dead times in the sports calendar. We're in one of those times that, quite frankly, it's probably my least favorite point in the entire sports calendar, as we are now 8 days removed from the Super Bowl. You're 10 days past the NBA trade deadline, and the NBA is in the midst of their All-Star break. MLB has just reported for spring training, with pitchers and catchers reporting in the middle of last week, and then position players arriving just yesterday. And then the NHL is on their hiatus due to the Winter Olympics, and most of their players playing for their respective teams over in Italy. So this is one of those rare dead times in the sports calendar where you're sort of grasping for straws at things to talk about. And there's only so much that you can talk about when it comes to early spring training. There's only so much that you can talk about when it comes to entering the NFL offseason and the what ifs. And then when it comes to the NBA All-Star Weekend, this was a weekend that I used to get up for. This was a weekend that I used to look forward to as a kid, as a teenager. I thought the Saturday night events were fun to watch back then. The All-Star Game used to be fun to watch back then when you had the best of the best. But that enjoyment and that time of looking forward to this event has died down over the years as I've grown from my teen years into my 20s to now being a mid-30s adult, due to the fact that I look at it and I'm like, the star players don't care, so why the hell should I? Yeah, you still get some stars playing in the three-point shooting contest and the shooting stars competition when you get these group pairings from certain teams, like you had with the Knicks in winning that contest. You had Jalen Brunson, his dad Rick, Karl Anthony Towns, and Knicks alumni Allen Houston. And in the three-point shooting contest, you had stars such as Devin Booker and the eventual winner, Damian Lillard, who I'm not even sure why he was allowed to compete in this contest, considering he's still recovering from tearing his Achilles back in the playoffs last year. But when you get to the dunk contest, which used to be a cool event when I was a kid because stars would participate in it, guys that are either going to or are now in the Hall of Fame, all of the greats that you think of as far as dunking were participating in it. But in the last 15 years, The stars haven't given a damn about it. You're having these guys that aren't even all-stars participate in the event. So I'm like, they don't care. Why the hell should I? And who the hell is Kassad Johnson or Carter Bryant? These run-of-the-mill guys in the league that you barely knew existed other than this weekend. And the All-Star game had turned into a total snooze fest. They tried their hardest to get things to a competitive way, whether it be with the captains situations and having a draft, and then you do the charity surrounding each quarter, where the fourth quarter would turn into a no-clock event, and they would a target score based on the team leading going into the fourth quarter. But even still, through watching that, it turned into nothing but a lob, layup, and dunk competition where there was little to no defense being played. It turned into as much of a joke as the NFL Pro Bowl had turned into. And I get it, more times than not, these all-star games in the sports are not going to resemble the regular season and postseason intensity that you get. The only one that really still does resemble somewhat of the real game is the MLB All-Star game. But I looked at this past weekend as really kind of the last straw to do something to entice the players and give some kind of an interest here when it comes to the fans and the league in general, because this game had become a total snooze fest when you were doing just East versus West. When you had one team that would go out there and score damn near 200 points, the other would be right behind it with about $180. And I think the other thing that hurt it over the years is that a lot of the best players in the sport these days are international players. And the likes of Luka Doncic is not going to play hard defense. Hell, the best player in the sport, Nikola Jokic, he really doesn't give a damn about this. He really did not want to be there this weekend. So you had to do something to spice it up. And having this format where you have two teams comprised of American players, the Stars team comprised of mostly the younger American players, the Stripes composed of the veteran American players, and then a world team brought somewhat of intensity back to this game. Plus, it does help when your young stars are actually giving a damn. We know that you're not going to get 100% intensity and regular season determination out of the likes of LeBron James, Kevin Durant, hell, even Kawhi Leonard, even though he put on a pretty good show for the most part yesterday and was in contention for the MVP up until the Stripes team getting smacked around in the fourth game of this competition. But if they're going to put this thing on TV, going to charge fans tickets for coming to this event, you want to see that they actually care, that they actually give a damn a little bit. You saw intensity from Victor Wembanyama, him showing a lot of annoyance when his team gave up a walk-off three to Scotty Barnes to win the first game. Or the edge and intensity that you saw from Anthony Edwards, a guy that a lot of people have pegged as one of, if not the future face of this game. But in order to be that face of the game, you not just have to come out and show out in a game like this amongst your peers, you have to come out and show out in the postseason. And that's where it's going to be determined for the likes of Anthony Edwards, for the likes of Victor Wembanyama. They're chasing after that goal that their peers, Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, have been able to accomplish in recent years and have more of a grasp, more of an argument than they do right now on being that face of the sport, even albeit Jokic just seems like one of these guys where it's come, play the game, and then go home. His job seems more like a hobby to him. It's something that he happens to be good at rather than something that he actually loves. This covering up at a time where the NBA is in the conversation for all of the wrong reasons. This weekend should be viewed as a celebration. This weekend should be viewed as the spotlight being on the NBA for all of these great players that they have, both the ones that are on the back nine of their career and about ready to retire and move on to another phase in their life, going along with the stars that you hope are going to carry us through the next decade. But of course, you got to have a controversy. Of course, you got to have a bad light shined on things. And I think it's the wrong conversation that we're having this week. The conversation a lot over the last couple of days has been about the tanking issue that goes on in this league. And this has been a growing problem for, I would say, the last decade, where you have these teams that are not in the midst of things, that will try their best to cover it up, but in the back of their minds, the front office and the coaching staff are trying to lose games to put themselves in the best position moving forward. They see what getting a top draft pick, getting the generational talent in their sport in a given draft can do to change their franchise. Because more so than any of the other sports, I guess other than drafting a quarterback in the NFL, drafting a franchise player in the NBA can change everything for you. But the problem that these teams are not realizing, whether you want to talk about right now the Utah Jazz and the Indiana Pacers, the teams that have both gotten fines in this last week. And honestly, what is fining these teams going to do? I mean, you fine the Jazz $500,000 for pulling Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. in the fourth quarters of games in the last 2 weeks, only to find out that Jaren Jackson Jr. is now going to be out for the remainder of the season, as he's going to now have a surgical procedure done on his knee. Yeah, big deal on that. Or you're finding the Pacers at a time when you look at them. They have the second worst record in the Eastern Conference. They're without Tyrese Halliburton. They trade for Zubac. He hasn't played for them yet. So what do you expect from them? I mean, of course they're going to be as protective as humanly possible of Pascal Siakam, because that's their only real great big-time player playing for them right now, and they don't want him to be going under the knife like Halliburton was. They want it to be at a point where next year you have Siakam, Halliburton, and Zubac together, and you can add a young talent to that group. But the problem is, while some of these kids that are coming out in this draft look very talented, whether it be Peterson, whether it be Diabanza, whether it be Cameron Boozer, none of these guys project to be, a Victor Wembanyama. None of these guys project to be a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant. And how we've seen teams where they don't have to tank and they still end up with the best player in the draft. Remember, once upon a time, the Golden State Warriors lucked into Steph Curry being, the 7th or 8th pick in the draft? Or how about the Denver Nuggets and Jokic? He was a second-round draft pick, and no one knew much about him because he was playing internationally. So it doesn't just have to be the draft lottery and getting the most lottery balls to go your way. I mean, ever since they started weighting the lottery and weighting it based on where teams fell, instead of giving all the teams that missed out in the postseason and they're in the draft lottery the same opportunity at getting that top pick, that's probably the way they should do it, rather than this idea that Adam Silver has floated out there where, hey, let's just make these guys unrestricted free agents, because then, these mid-market teams will never get a chance at getting these guys. None of these guys will want to go to play in Utah or Indiana or places like Memphis or Charlotte. They'll want to go to the big markets and really raise their stock, really raise their profile. But hey, that's Adam Silver, because he's focusing on the wrong thing right now. Rather than focusing on the tanking problem, how about you focus on this load management crap that has been going on in the league and just continues to get worse and worse and worse? Because it's one thing when teams like the Warriors with Steph Curry, or the Rockets with Durant, or even the Lakers with LeBron, you're not going to expect LeBron to play in 75 to 82 games in a given season. He's 41, 42 years old, and he's on his way out. And trust me, people, I don't believe him when he said over the weekend he's unsure if he's going to play next year. Please, this is a guy that's wearing a patch celebrating his 23rd season in the NBA. Of course he's going to play next year and promote it as the goodbye tour. Now, whether that's for the Lakers or that's the Cavaliers or someone else that we're not thinking of right now, maybe his other former team, the Miami Heat, he's going to soak it in and jam it down our throats for as much as he can get. But my big problem with the load management is when it comes to the guys that are in their 20s or in their early 30s that aren't dealing with any kind of long-term injury issues. See, it's one thing, Kawhi Leonard, he pulls himself in and out of playing time, but he's magically healthy when contract times come up. But how about that fan that maybe you're a Knicks fan in the Midwest, and you know that there's one time a year where the Knicks come out to the city that you live nearby. You save up for you, your family, take your kids to the game, and you get there and you find out, oh, Jalen Brunson or Karl Anthony Towns are not playing. Or you're, say, a Laker fan out here on the East Coast, and you save up for the Lakers to come out, and you find out that a perfectly healthy Luka Doncic has been scratched because his team is playing 3 games in a 4 or 5 day span. That's the kind of thing that Adam Silver should be concerning himself with. Not this tanking thing, because there's no way to truly stop it. You have to concern yourself not with kissing the ass of the star players, which he's become way too buddy-buddy with these guys. I mean, you gave them what they wanted and having a full week off for the All-Star break so that even the guys that are participating in All-Star weekend can have a little bit of a break once this weekend is done. But you've done nothing to truly throw a bone in there for the fans. Not this ridiculous NBA Cup that you do post-Thanksgiving time that I don't think anyone really gives a damn about. I don't think any Knicks fan is doing cartwheels saying, woohoo, we won the NBA Cup right now. Because what is that really resulted in? What benefit beyond putting extra money in the player's pocket has that given any of these teams? Do something that helps the fan out, not just is 100% bending over and kissing the ass of some of these overpaid, whiny little brats. And Adam Silver's got to get his head out of the clouds and realize the problem is not tanking, nor is it what the format is for the All-Star game. It's load management. Load management is what's hurting the popularity of your sport and what is killing fans from developing a true connection to their team, even when they don't live in that given city. All right, a lot I want to get to over the remainder of this podcast. Give you some thoughts on that fight that took place last week between the Pistons and the Hornets. Mixing some football, some baseball thoughts, as well as once again, someone decided to run their mouth about the Yankees over the last week and the problems that I have with that, mixing some thoughts about the Mets. So a lot I want to get to here over the next about 40 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me once again this week. And like I tell you each and every single Monday at this time, please sit back, relax, hell, put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
This went a bit under the radar over the last couple of days due to NBA All-Star Weekend and Adam Silver's over concern with tanking with some of these bad teams. But a future NBA Hall of Famer announced his retirement on Friday when Chris Paul wrote on Instagram, quote, "This is it. After 21 years, I'm stepping away from basketball." And truth be told, if you listen to this podcast long enough, you would know I'm not the biggest Chris Paul fan in the world. I've always thought that he is a bit overrated and has been kind of given a free pass from the media, especially when it comes to his postseason shortcomings. But you look at what the guy has done. Yeah, he never won an NBA championship. He got to the finals one time with the Phoenix Suns, and they choked away a 2-0 lead in that series to Giannis and the Bucks. But he's a 12-time All-Star. 11 times he was an All-NBA player, including 4 times first-team NBA. Was a 9-time All-Defensive Teams member. Rookie of the Year in 2006. 2-time Olympic gold medalist, a member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team, piled up some really impressive stats over the course of his career with over 12,000 assists, over 2,700 steals, was the first person to score at least 20,000 points while recording at least 10,000 assists, and since then has been joined by both LeBron James and Russell Westbrook in accomplishing that. And even though I wasn't a big fan of him, it's sad the way his career ended. Because, while not everybody gets to write the final chapter of their career the way they want. And you want a player to go out on their terms. You don't want it to be because of injury or them dragging themselves to the finish line, as we've seen from a lot of athletes in certain sports where they stay around too long and look like a shell of themselves. But he signed on with the Clippers this past offseason thinking that the team that he had the most history with, he was going to have one last year, go out on good terms, going out to a love affair with that fan base. But him and Ty Lue never saw eye to eye. In fact, the last couple of weeks he was there, it was really contagious to the point where they actually sent him home on December 1st in the midst of a road trip overnight, I had a big problem with that. Like, I still do to this point. That's the kind of thing you do to guys who are malcontents. That's the kind of thing you do to a guy who's a troublemaker on your team and is constantly either getting suspended or getting thrown out of games. That's the kind of thing that if the Warriors ever had enough of his crap, they would do to Draymond Green, or that you would think a team would do to Dylan Brooks at certain points in his career. Not a guy like Chris Paul. Say whatever you want about him as a player, has always come across as a stand-up guy for the most part, has no off-the-field troubles to speak of, and you're going to send him home like that for him to get traded to the Raptors, get released without even reporting to the team, and that be the end of his career? It's kind of a shitty way to go out, and I severely hope that is not the way that fans remember him. Because while I was not the biggest fan of him, he did have a great career, a career that didn't have a championship. But then again, there are better players that didn't win titles, and he wouldn't be the first all-time great that walked away without that elusive ring. Now, the league returns from the All-Star break this coming Thursday. You can't even say it's the second half of the season. It's the final third. Everybody has played somewhere in the range of 53 to 55 games and have only about 27 to 29 games remaining in the schedule. And it's going to be fascinating, especially in this area, watching what goes on with the New York Knicks. Because the Knicks sit here right now at 35-20, third place in the Eastern Conference, in a very precarious spot. Because I don't think they're going to catch the Detroit Pistons. They're 6 games behind them, and they've looked like shit against the Pistons every time they've played them this year. Whether it be a couple of weeks ago when they were without Cat and OG, or a little over a month ago they played them in Detroit, and both times they got beat down. No matter who was out there, who was sitting out, the Pistons have had the Knicks number, and they really badly want the Knicks after the way their season ended, losing to them in 6 games in the first round last year. And if you're the Knicks, you want to avoid facing the Pistons as long as possible, even though this is the kind of year with what you've built up on this team, the roster that you've put together, and now the depth that you've developed and acquiring the likes of Jose Alvarado, adding Clarkson during the offseason, some of these younger players off your bench come of age and be effective rotation pieces to go along with one of the best starting fives in the NBA. I mean, you look at the Knicks, they have something like a 75% win percentage when all 5 of those guys are out there, and when missing even one of them, they're a game under 500. But this is the year that you look at for the Knicks where they should get to the finals. And their best chance to do that is avoid the Detroit Pistons as long as possible. But you're not going to do that if you have bad losses like you did last Tuesday against the Pacers, a Pacers team that's competing for nothing and is without one of their best players in Halliburton. And a game like Wednesday against the Sixers in Philly does nothing to up my confidence in them, because you're supposed to beat the Sixers when they're without Embiid. So putting on a 50-point beatdown against them does nothing to really change the opinion. What changes the opinion is like this coming Thursday when you play the Pistons in your return from the All-Star break, or on Saturday night when you welcome in the Rockets for a primetime matchup before going on the road to play the Bulls. That's what raises your hope, raises your confidence in the Knicks. Because the Knicks sit here right now, they're a half game behind the Celtics for second, but they're also just one game ahead of the Cavaliers for fourth, and 2 games ahead of the Raptors for fifth. Now, I know they have handled the Raptors recently, beating them down in Toronto, but still, you can't afford to play around here, especially when you know that there's a team above you that has had your number this season, and a team just ahead of you in the Celtics that may get a very lethal weapon back in the coming weeks. As we've seen now, the Celtics are bracing themselves for the pending return of Jason Tatum, something that I did not think we were going to see in this regular season, but he is apparently the quickest healer of all time from Achilles surgery, when you're seeing reports now just only, less than 10 months out. He's getting ready to work out with their G League team. He's practicing with them. He's involved in 5-on-5 drills. And I'm sure in the next week or so, we're going to start hearing about him scrimmaging potentially with the NBA squad. And you imagine with how that team has thrived, even without him. They make additions at the trade deadline, like adding Vucevic to add some size there. And then you can bring back at minimum, top 15, top 20 player in this sport, even though it's going to take some time for him to acclimate, and you probably won't play him in back-to-backs. If you can get him back before the postseason, get him up to game speed going into the playoffs, that makes the Celtics even more dangerous than you thought they were going to be this year, when you were thinking, they'd go through the entire season without him. So you run the risk here of falling behind the Celtics, potentially allowing them home court against you for the second postseason in a row, and putting yourself in a spot where you could potentially be looking at facing the Pistons before the Eastern Conference Finals. And speaking of the Detroit Pistons, a week ago tonight, they had a very interesting night against the Charlotte Hornets. A Charlotte Hornets team who has gotten themselves at minimum in the conversation for a play-in spot. Had won 8 or 9 games in a row up until facing the Pistons, who must have been watching clips of the bad boy Pistons with the action that went down between them and the Hornets last Monday, when Diabate and Bridges got in a little bit of a tussle with Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart of the Pistons. And you look at what went down here with Duren having the ball late in the third quarter when he's fouled by Diabate, and then Duren kind of initiates the problems here when he face palms Diabate, and that led to utter chaos, including Bridges running at him when Diabate seemed like he was calmed down. The action spilling over into the fans. And then you have Isaiah Stewart, who is now kind of the new troublemaker in the league, with him constantly in the mix of this kind of nonsense, coming running in off the bench throwing punches at Bridges. A couple of things here. You had to suspend all of these guys. Stewart got the longest of the suspension, but I don't think he got long enough. With his recent rap sheet, he should have gotten way more than the 7 games he got. Probably should have been in the 10 to 12 game range, because you have to send a severe statement to this guy. Well, he's a good player and a serviceable player for the Pistons, a guy that can be a difference maker with the defense and heart and hustle he brings. He is also way too emotional and cannot be treating NBA games like it's a UFC fight. I also don't like the fact that this action spilled over into the front row of the crowd. Well, I didn't expect anything to boil over to like the level of the way things were with the Malice in the Palace 20 years ago. Still, you having players fall into the front row, falling onto fans. You don't like to see that. But it brought a little bit of warmness to my heart seeing this fight take place. Hell, I think there was even another fight that took place in the league over the last week. In fact, you saw a fight take place in college basketball over the weekend between St. John's and Providence. When it comes to the NBA in this instance, I have not liked the fact that the league has become a little bit too much of a we're all best friends kind of sport, where you're seeing guys essentially walk over giving each other hugs in the middle of games. You're seeing a little bit too much of jovialness, a little bit too much of camaraderie between teams in the middle of games, where it's like, hold on, timeout. You're supposed to be competing with them. You want to be buddies with them in 2 hours when the game's over. That's fine. But during the game, you don't like them. They don't like you. That's the way it's supposed to be. You want to win the game. This isn't rec basketball where everybody gets a slice of pizza after the game. This is paid professional sports where you're trying to go out there and win games and win a championship potentially at the end of the day. So it was good to see a little bit of aggressiveness and emotions boil over amongst teams. I just wish that it was, some of the stars of the league showing this kind of emotion, showing this kind of intensity. I would have loved to have seen what would have happened if Cade Cunningham was a little bit more in the mix of this. I'm not saying throwing punches, but him showing a little bit of anger, him showing a little bit of dislike or dismay toward the Hornets. But it was a good thing to see. Once again, don't like seeing it spill over to the crowd, and Isaiah Stewart should have gotten a much longer suspension, but showed me that there still can be a little place in this sport for intensity and a general dislikingness between teams when you're this late into an NBA season. They don't all have to just be cookie cutters and best friends with each other.
I'll be back.
Rather than Mets owner Steve Cohen being concerned on whether or not he's going to name a team captain, which he's come out today saying there will never be a team captain as long as he's the owner. Maybe he should be more concerned what Met fans are concerned about, and that's the news surrounding their 2 biggest stars in this last week. For one, I'm not sure why it took until now for them to move Juan Soto from right to left field when he's not a great defender, and right field can be more difficult to play at Citi Field than left field. There's those dimensions out there in right field and right center that can be kind of tricky for an outfielder to deal with. When it comes to Lindor more so, you have a serious situation on hand here where in all likelihood, you're not going to have this guy for the start of the regular season. Because as we've found out in the last couple days, he's going to have surgery on his left hammock bone, a injury that's right around the thumb region, and that's going to knock him out for at least 6 weeks. And they're saying that, he could still be available for opening day on March 26th. But tell me, how is that going to be possible when he's missing all of spring training? He's not going to be getting any live at-bats versus pitching. He's not going to be able to swing a bat for, you got to think, at this point, at least a month as he recovers from that. And he just had the surgery this past Wednesday. So how, in fact, do the Mets think that he's going to be ready? And you don't have a legitimate backup plan for him at shortstop. I mean, you're not going to replace a star player like this as it is. But you traded Luis Angel Acuna to get Luis Roberts last month. Other options for shortstop are really unproven, especially in the case of Ronnie Mauricio, who seems kind of big to be a shortstop. And you're not considering Bo Bichette for that spot, even despite his experience at shortstop over the last 7 years playing for the Blue Jays. So I'm not exactly sure how that's the biggest topic of conversation when it comes to the Mets on whether they have a stupid captain or not, compared to the fact that you're at best second best player in Francisco Lindor probably won't be available for opening day. And this is a little bit of an epidemic right now in the sport, as you're seeing not just him, but Corbin Carroll and Jackson Holliday go down with this same kind of injury, and their teams have already ruled them out for the start of the season. But hey, they're not the only ones that are dealing with injury problems this early in spring training. I mean, you see the Rockies have already placed Chris Bryant on the 60-day IL, and he's kind of turning into the new Anthony Rendon, where he got paid and now has barely played. He's missed over 70% of his games in the last several years, and he's still owed about $78 million over the next 3 seasons. Then you're seeing the Toronto Blue Jays. They're going to be without Anthony Santander for 5 to 6 months as he's recovering from a shoulder injury. They're going to be without a couple of pitchers at the start of this season, including Shane Bieber, him going down with forearm fatigue, kind of being slowed down here in the early stages of spring training. And I know they say that you would rather have these kind of injuries in spring training, the ones that, maybe aren't season ending, but are going to delay the start of your season. But still, you look at the American League East, it looks like it's going to be a gauntlet coming into this year. Toronto did add Dylan Cease, but they lost Bo Bichette. They're going to be without Anthony Santander. And you look at what some of the teams around them have done, with the Orioles adding Pete Alonso. The Red Sox, they lost Alex Bregman, but added Sonny Gray to their rotation. They also, in the last week, signed a utility infielder in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who I want to get to him. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa has once again brought to everyone's attention that 2 things in life can be true. In the last couple of days, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, after signing on with the Red Sox, made an omission that should be kind of stinging for the Yankees organization to hear. And it's not along the same lines of what you heard some disgruntled former Yankee players like Sonny Gray and Aroldis Chapman say over this offseason, where they just come across as guys with sour grapes and an axe to grind against the organization. Unjustified axes to grind against them, might I add. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, when talking to the media at the start of spring training, said that the Blue Jays, who he was part of in the second half last year, were glad the Red Sox lost in the playoffs in the wild card round because they thought the Yankees were the easier matchup. He said, quote, "We thought it was a better matchup for us the other way, facing the Yankees." Now, in his mind, it was based on them not having to face Garrett Crochet. But this is the second year in a row you now have players from the team that eliminated the Yankees from the postseason clowning them through the media. Remember, last year, after the Dodgers had beaten the Yankees in the World Series, you had a whole bunch of the bottom level players on their roster that didn't do much in that World Series. Chris Taylor and then Joe Kelly, who was injured, missed the entire postseason, talking crap about the Yankees. Now, second year in a row here, you have a player in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa who was an awful former Yankee, did nothing and was an awful shortstop for us in 2022, running his mouth. While he's not the guy that should be running his mouth, just like Chris Taylor and Joe Kelly are not the kind of guys that should be running their mouth about the Yankees, considering they did nothing in that World Series. It also brings to light that, once again, teams are not afraid of the New York Yankees anymore. When you have teams going into postseason series looking forward to facing the Yankees, hoping that they get to face the Yankees in the postseason, that is not something you want to hear. That has got to be a stinging blow for that entire organization, whether it be ownership, the front office, the coaching staff, the players. Hell, I know as a diehard Yankee fan, it pisses me off, even despite, as I said, not the guy that should be making these kind of comments. But you remember during the postseason, you had Vlad Guerrero Jr. in the post-game celebration, laughing, yucking it up with David Ortiz, doing the whole, and Yankees lose. That nonsense. I know it's got to make, former Yankees, legendary Yankees, like Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez, sick to their stomachs seeing this. But clearly, it doesn't make this team sick. They treat this stuff like it's a crapshoot. They treat it like, oh, we'll just go out there and fight our hardest. That they spend more time being offended by the fact that people are saying that they're just running back the same team, which they are. It may be different than last year's opening day team, and they may be getting Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon back some point a month into the season. But this is the team that you ended last year with. You made no upgrades in the bullpen. You brought back Trent Grisham and are now, in all likelihood, going to be placing Jason Dominguez back in the minor leagues, pushing back further, him getting a real shot to prove he can be a future piece on this team. And now you got these players from around the league clowning you when you didn't make any serious upgrades during the offseason. And I get it. Some of these pitchers that were out there, you probably weren't going to sign. I mean, Remember last year at the deadline, they didn't trade for Merrill Kelly because they heard he didn't want to be a Yankee. They probably got that same feeling and checked in at least with Zach Gallen before he re-signed with the Diamondbacks. That and the fact he had the qualifying offer attached to him. I was glad they didn't go after Nick Castellanos because he just seems like a troublemaker, especially with the stuff that has come to the light of day since getting released by the Phillies last week. But this Yankee team, a team that should strive themselves, a franchise that should strive themselves for great things, for wanting to get to where the Dodgers have been the last 2 years and look like the favorites for it once again this year, in a year where you don't know beyond this year if you're going to have baseball in 2027, should be striving for greatness. And it just feels like they're once again happy to be here and are more than willing to let people take craps on them and bring up their shortcomings, and they do nothing about it. Mediocrity and just being a participant in the postseason is tolerated now and considered the new norm for the Yankees when there should be a much, much higher standard for this franchise.
I'll be back.
Can the NFL be any bigger pigs? I mean, seriously, every time you think that they can't top themselves when it comes to Roger Goodell and the ownership of trying to create money grabs, they seem to top themselves. And whether it be adding games on Christmas, even when Christmas does not fall on a traditional NFL day, such as Thursday, Sunday, Monday, or even the late in the season Saturdays, or having Thursday games and having only 3 days off for the players in between playing on the previous Sunday. Now you see the reports over the last couple days where next season they're going to begin the year on a Wednesday. And in the past, the only time that they've done that is on a year where it's a presidential election and they don't want to go up against the political conventions. Well, I'm sorry, unless I missed something, there's no presidential election next year. I know it's going to be the midterms, but there's not going to be any big-time political convention. There's not going to be anything you're going up against. No, it's because they are so passionate about wanting to have a game in Melbourne, Australia on week 1, so they've got to put it on a Wednesday. The first Friday there is on 9/11, and that they don't want to combat with that. I mean, are you frickin' kidding me here? A Wednesday? You're supposed to start the season, folks, with the previous Super Bowl winner getting a home game to start the year, not a game internationally where we're not even sure what time this is going to be at. What are you going to play this game at 9 a.m. on a weekday morning and expect people to take off from work? And if it's between two West Coast teams, as it's currently projected to be 49ers Rams as part of its international series, what is that going to be, 6 a.m. West Coast time? I mean, this is a downright embarrassment and really low, even for their standards. But then again, let's not forget, this is the same NFL owners that filed a grievance and won their grievance with the Players Association, banning the union from publishing the future player report cards that are distributed out there saying that it broke an agreement between the clubs and the players, and that it's very disparaging to the clubs by making those private. But hey, I agree with defensive lineman of the Steelers, Cameron Hayward, who's one of the vice presidents of the Players Association. Not making that public kind of feels like you're hiding something. What do you guys got to hide? What, that you have some cheap, really bad, awful owners in this sport that don't give their players the greatest of playing fields, don't give them the greatest of accommodations, whether it be for them or their family? Really, it's just an outright joke, an embarrassment. This and starting the season on a Wednesday and not giving the Seahawks that first home game, that moment of glory that they rightfully earned in winning Super Bowl 60. You have to rush to have a game in Melbourne, Australia. Damn. Every time you think they can't get one worse, they top themselves. And the worst part about it is, it seems like my owner, Woody Johnson, played a big role in banning of the report cards becoming public, because he got all upset because, the Jets got the worst grade of them all and got a F grade from the Players Association. I wonder why. Maybe it's because you're one of the worst run organizations in all sports, and it's telling something that you got the only F, even despite how cheap the Bengals organization is and how poorly run the Panthers have been over the years, and the fact that the Raiders are paying 6 different people to not be their head coach. You still got the worst grade of them all. And that's just the tip of an iceberg on what's going to be a very interesting offseason to follow for the New York Jets at a time where they've got a boatload of draft picks, but don't control their destiny to getting that long-term answer at quarterback. And they're not going to be picking the top spot. That's going to be the Raiders, and they're going to take Fernando Mendoza. Multiple options have come off the board for them. You've seen Dante Moore is going back to Oregon. And then in recent days, Trinidad Chambliss has won his grievance, won his appeal with the lawsuit he filed in Mississippi that is going to get him the chance, as of right now, to get a 6th year of eligibility in college football. So now if you're the Jets, you're looking at stopgap options when it comes to the quarterback position. And even despite there being some stir in this and people wanting to make news and headlines on this, I don't think that there is any way possible Derek Carr is going to come out of retirement to play for the Jets. I knew once upon a time they were kicking the tires on that, but remember, that was a regime ago. That was multiple head coaches ago when they were hot and heavy for him if Aaron Rodgers didn't come to the Jets. And he even said it on a podcast last week, saying that if he got the chance to come out of retirement, would he? He would like to, but he would also only do it if it was for a team in playoff contention and a team that is going to give him a chance to not just win games, but stay healthy and give him a chance to win a Super Bowl. And while the Jets have a really good offensive line, why would he want to risk coming back from a labrum tear and degeneration in his rotator cuff at 34 years old to play for a Jets team that has so many holes on it? Doesn't have a real number 2 wide receiver. You're unsure if Breece Hall is going to be a Jet next year. They have a lot of holes to fill on the defensive side of things. So that's an option you can completely throw out the window there. Kirk Cousins would be a nice stopgap option, but in his mind, he probably still thinks he has a couple of years more to play and wants to be on a team that has a better chance of winning something. I don't know if he's going to chase the idea of playing for the Vikings. I think they've moved away from that option, but he would probably rather remain with the Falcons on a lesser deal than he would come to a team like the Jets, especially now that they have an offensive coach in Kevin Stefanski there. And then you look at some of the other options that could potentially be out there. Right away, no way in hell should they go near Kyler Murray. He's vastly overrated, he's immature, and let's say he even does have a decent season for the Jets and they win 7 games with him at quarterback. That may fool them into thinking they have their long-term answer when, if you can't get the answer in this year's draft, because after Mendoza, the options seem very bleak, next year is loaded in a year where you have 3 first-round picks. So, no on Kyler Murray. Definitely no on Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, he's one hit away from being out of the sport altogether. While I'd like to take a shot at Mac Jones, the 49ers have already said they're not going to trade him. So your other options are really these veteran stopgap guys like a Jacoby Brissett or a Jameis Winston, but still, those are guys you have to trade for, and it doesn't seem like either the Cardinals or the Giants are going to be willing to move off those guys because they're good guys to have in a locker room. I mean, are we really facing a world where Aaron Glenn is going to be so potentially stubborn that he made the choice to sign this guy last offseason, that they possibly run it back this year with Justin Fields? I mean, right now, you look at the Jets, you have a quarterback room that is Justin Fields, who's an utter mess, Tyrod Taylor, who's a good veteran to have in the locker room, but is just as likely to get injured on the playing field as you and I would be if we stepped out to play quarterback. Hell, he's likely to get injured just going to get a cup of coffee in the morning. And Brady Cook, who probably should be working next to me at Amazon. So this is an utter mess that the Jets are dealing with at the quarterback position. And there's no clear answers to that in an off season where you really have to bulk up this roster and make this an appetizing place to play and build yourself toward more competence. Because after this year, Aaron Glenn may not get another off season. And at the same time, while you don't want him to do something desperate, you also don't want the Jets to be the punching bag of the league once again. You want them to finally get back to some form of respectability. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 from Monday, February 16th, 2026. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week. Remember, folks, you get one life, so you might as well try to live it up. And I'll talk to you guys again, same time next week. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.